Hello scholars, we're going to continue to talk about acids and bases today and look at some more of your common household acids and bases. Unfortunately, I don't have a lab at my house, so we took the approach of looking at what can we do around the house. And I'm going to start by talking about the difference between baking soda and baking powder. I don't know if you're anything like me, but oftentimes when I read directions, I kind of skip around, and I have absolutely made cookies before using baking powder instead of baking soda when the recipe asks for baking soda. And I also there was one time last year I ran out of baking soda, but I was able to find a recipe for baking powder. And our recipes for cookies or different things that you're baking all depends on the other ingredients that the recipe calls for. So oftentimes if you're baking cookies, it will for sure call for baking soda typically, and sometimes it will call for baking powder too. And the difference between these two is a baking soda, we've talked about how is just a base, versus baking powder is a base, but it also has some acidic ingredients and some other things. So your baking soda will react with other things, with other ingredients that are more acidic in your recipe, such as butter, actually slightly acidic, and your brown sugar. And some of your other ingredients are very slightly acidic, so they will neutralize together and make your carbon dioxide gas, which will allow your cookies to spread out and taste really good through that chemical reaction that takes place. Versus your baking powder, it makes your cookies more so puff during your baking. So everybody has their different preferences in cookies, and potentially you might want to add more of one than the other, find a recipe that has more of one than another to help make your cookies taste a certain way, depending on what you like. So again, baking soda, you're going to use more acidic ingredients, maybe your recipe calls for buttermilk, lemon juice, etc. And then your baking powder, you're going to use maybe more ingredients such as regular milk or flour. Over last week I made scones for my mom's birthday, and my recipe called for baking powder because I wanted things to puff up a little bit more as they were baking. In this demonstration, we are going to see what happens when you have heartburn or your stomach gets really acidic. So typically speaking, the stomach acid found in your stomach is about between 1 to 3 pH, depending on what you've eaten and all sorts of different factors. So the foods that we eat are much less acidic than what the stomach acid in your stomach is. But we're going to do a little demonstration. Unfortunately, I don't have actual gastric acid or even something as strong as that, just because that can only be found in the lab and I'm at home. But let's say that you get up and for breakfast you have a clementine, which we know is acidic. So say this jar right here is your stomach. We eat some clementines, it's acidic, and then we drink some orange juice we see here. And of course, if it's the morning, you got to drink some of your coffee. So we're building this acid from what you are eating. Then maybe it's lunchtime and you have a ton of salsa with your tacos. And with lunch, you might pair it with some carbonated beverage or LaCroix. And LaCroix is only slightly acidic, so really not that acidic at all, but could have an impact. And then comes dinner time and you have even more acid. And at this point, you might start to have a little bit of an upset stomach. And so you might hear, okay, take some Tums. And let's see what happens if we add a Tum to this. So again, we said Tums are bases, and we just ate a bunch of acidic foods. Let's see what happens to the Tums. Here's a zoomed in picture of what the reaction we see happening here. So we have the acid, which is all the stuff that we ate, along with, in your stomach, there's a lot more acids, such as hydrochloric acid and other strong gastric acids. And then you ate a Tum, which is a base, and we start to see the acid and base react together to form a salt and a water. So we can see this reaction occurring, and that is why your stomach will feel better, because you are you're raising the pH to make your stomach acid not be quite as strong. It's hard to tell now, but my kitchen sink is pretty dirty, and through this quarantine I've been trying to clean some things up. And we know we've been talking about how baking soda is a base and vinegar or acetic acid is an acid, and when bases and acids combine, they will create a salt in a water, and potentially you have used baking soda to clean, and maybe you've used vinegar too. And one common way to clean sinks is with vinegar and baking soda together, because when you combine them, will create this salty water as well as carbon dioxide gas that will help our sink look cleaner. Vinegar naturally disinfects while helping remove hard water stains from our stainless steel sink, and I'm all about disinfecting things these days. So currently you can see that my sink is a little wet, and now I'm going to add some baking soda to it. Get a wet sponge or something and start scrubbing it just a bit. I can start to see some of it fizzing. I'm going to add water, warm water, to my sink. And then with this warm water, I'm going to add my acetic acid or my vinegar to see what starts to happen. And I have my drain clogged right now. So I have my big bottle of vinegar. We'll see that it starts to bubble. And what's left again, those bubbles, we know mean a chemical reaction is occurring, and we're getting that carbon dioxide gas along with the salt and water, because anytime we have an acid-base reaction, we're left with the salt and water. I'm going to let this sit here a little bit to better clean off, and then I will show you the results. And I wish you could all see better, but my sink is much cleaner. Thanks for joining us today. I hope that you enjoyed getting to see some of the different acids and bases in my house. I'm sure you have similar ones in your house, and I hope things are starting to make a little more sense and that you guys can start to see chemistry all around you while you're cleaning and cooking and baking while at home. I miss you all.